Play clock down to 1. Goff wants the snap, hands it to Gibbs. Outside right, he's got the first down and more. 25-20, 15-10, 5, end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions!
Welcome to Week 18 of the NFL season. I am Tim Twentyman. This is the Twentyman the Huddle podcast. And boy, what a Week 18 the NFL has in store for us. Game 272 means a ton. And the guy joining me right now is going to be the voice of that game. Mike Tirico does a great job play-by-play for NBC. He is one of the best in the business. Mike, thanks so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Happy New Year, Tim. Great to be with you and looking forward to Sunday night in downtown Detroit for sure.
Boy, the scheduling gods look down on the NFL with a huge smile for 272 for this one, did they, Mike? How much are you looking forward to Sunday night in Detroit? 2 14-2 teams going for the division title, going for the number 1 seed. I mean, the stakes can't be any bigger.
You try not to have rooting interest in games, but we were watching the Minnesota-Green Bay game with a great keen interest to see what was going to happen. And it's great that it played out this way, to have this as the standalone game with so much on the line. We've never looked down at a field in a regular season game and seen 2 14-win teams playing against each other. So in the 100-plus years of the NFL, we've never had a game with 2 teams that have won this much in the same season, meeting in the regular season, and with so much on the line. You know, Tim, I'll put this out there up front. Both of these teams can get to the Super Bowl from the 5 seed. Yeah. They have proven they can go on the road and win. Obviously, the Lions have not lost on the road this year, and Minnesota's only lost once on the road. That was on a Thursday night in LA where they lost their left tackle. So in the middle of the game, right before halftime. So both of these teams, whoever emerges as the 1 seed gets the bye, gets the rest, gets the road to the Super Bowl in the NFC through their place. But the other team is not out of it by any stretch of the imagination. So must win, big win. Yeah, of course. But the other path, while harder, is doable, I think, on both sides of the field.
And also a scenario where maybe in that second round we see a third matchup between these two teams. Very likely scenario too, which would be huge. Mike, you were at that wild card playoff game, Rams Lions last year. You saw what that atmosphere was like. People in the stands 45 minutes, the Jared Goff chants, just the electricity in that building. I expect it to rival that with what's on the line Sunday. Just how much are you looking forward to being in Ford Field, being in that kind of environment for calling a football game?
You're right, Tim. You know, I think the regular season game, even let's go back to the Tampa game, the divisional game. We were lucky enough to be there for that as well. It was a tremendous atmosphere. But it wasn't the same as that first game. That wild card game against the Rams, that'll be in my my top 5 all time forever, given an atmosphere for a game. And I think so many things built into it. 1, the run. 2, the Packers playing earlier and beating the Cowboys, and remember all the feelings about Dallas after what happened with Dan Skipper and reporting and not reporting. And because it was cold, so many people in the building watching, and it just built the atmosphere and the energy. The Stafford return. I don't think you can replicate all of those things except maybe for an NFC Championship game. So even though the atmosphere for the Tampa Bay divisional game, then the opener that we were there for against the Rams this year on Sunday Night Football, it wasn't the same as what we saw for the wildcard game. I think you make a great observation. It'll be that kind of energy and passion, because I think the fans are wise. These two teams have great fan bases, and these fans understand that because of the injuries and because of the way the Lions have played at home over the last couple of years, it's a huge advantage to have off week, 2 playoff games at home to try to get to the Super Bowl. Like I said before, they've won every game on the road this year, but you'd much prefer the week off, I think, with this team, just a chance to get healthy.
Yeah, and Mike, you've covered games at US Bank Stadium too. The atmosphere there is one of the best in the NFL too, with the snow and the skull and the horn. Lions fans have, I think, nightmares of that horn going off so many times. But those are two, like you said, they're 2 great fan bases, and going into those buildings and having to win a playoff game is going to be really, really tough. So it's huge in that regard for Minnesota getting it too, because that's a tough place to play US Bank. Mike, is it almost criminal in the sense that a 14-win team is going to have to go on the road in the playoffs? Look, you talked about it. Both of them can get to the Super Bowl. They can win on the road. But is it a little bit criminal? I like the fact that you win your division, you get a home game. The NFL's had that policy for a long time, but should they rethink it with this situation? Does it get talked about at all, or is it not even part of the conversation?
1000%. I'm with you, Tim. If you made me commissioner or in charge of the rules committee for 5 minutes, there were three things I would do. Number one, it's when the play clock hits 00, it's delay a game. Stop with this. It's 00, and the back judge looks to see if the ball is gone because you get 41 seconds to run a play. Why is that such a big deal? This is the league where we stop games to microscopically see if somebody's toe is inbounds, and we get almost everything in front of us with information right. So there's no reason at 00, much like the NBA backboard lights up so you can see it while you're still watching the play. The crossbar should have an LED set of lights, and it lights up when the play clock hits 0. And that's it. And the ball's not gone. It's no play. It's your penalty. Boom. Number one. Number two, both teams get the ball in overtime. And we've seen too many games this year. Again, the game we just had on Sunday night, Washington wins the toss, goes down the field, scores, game's over. Michael Penix Jr. never gets a chance to get on the field with Atlanta and their 4 top 10 draft picks. It doesn't make any sense. We do everything to be equitable. I know the defense is part of the story, but so too is the offense. I think that's completely unfair. And the third one is what you just referenced. If there's a difference of more than 3 games in the standings, I think the wild card team should get to host that playoff game. I'm not saying it because of this year. I've said that for the last couple of years. It's imbalanced to me. If you are a squeak in 9-8 team, you should not have home field advantage over a team that was 5 games better than you in the regular season. I think it adds more to the regular season. There's more to play for as you go through. Now, that could be an interesting factor to add to this. Hey, here's Team X. They have to win in week 18 to make sure that they stay 3 games ahead of the wild card team so they can have home field advantage. I'm with you. Divisions, I love to honor them because divisions go up and down cyclically. I think it keeps the regional excitement in. It makes the playoffs more exciting. It's a tradition of the league. I like all of that, but I'm with you. I would love to see that last part of a change.
2 teams that have 14 wins. You don't do that without having a great culture, Mike. And obviously with what Dan Campbell has built here in Detroit, but Kevin O'Connell too in Minnesota. You see, some of the storylines. You see how that team has embraced Sam Darnold and some of the comeback stories that they have on that team. Why do you think Dan Campbell and Kevin O'Connell are perfect fits? I know you've talked to both guys pretty extensively. Why are both those guys perfect fits for the situation that they're in?
I'm a massive Kevin O'Connell fan. The people who are consuming this are largely from the Detroit side of rooting for teams. So I don't need to tell you a word about Dan Campbell. But Kevin's got that in a different way, in his own way. Kevin's a former player. I think that's the common thread. Both are former players who were not superstar players and who understand and have seen things from a player and an assistant coach perspective that they would have done differently. They understand how to tap into their guys. With Kevin, it's been a lot of his quarterbacks, a lot of his offense, but they really know how to tap in and how to lead their group. Strong enough to have guys like Brian Flores, Aaron Glenn lead their defenses, kind of do their thing. Strong special teams, great support, on the same page with the general managers. I think on both sides, you could be looking at a game that could tilt the vote for executive of the year, coach of the year, because if you look at both sides, at Brad Holmes and Quessy in Minnesota has done an amazing job. And with Dan and KOC in Minnesota, both have done an amazing job this year. 15-2, number 1 seed, these teams, it's hard to say the other guy deserves coach of the year or executive of the year over the other. And there are other great candidates around the league too, obviously, but I think it might come down to that on Sunday night's results. But I think the common thread is what you mentioned in the question, the culture that they have built. Go to both teams, the players, the locker room, there's a great energy. And I'll tell you, Tim, that's happening a lot around the NFL. Atlanta and Washington, having seen them last Sunday, very similar things. They're building a good thing based on the culture that their coaches, Dan Quinn and Raheem Morris, are setting. And that's why I think maybe the most significant hire coming up in this hiring season is the Bears hire here in the NFC North, because look at the culture in Detroit with Dan Campbell, Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and obviously Green Bay with Matt LaFleur. You got 3 teams that are rolling, that are playoff teams, really built a good franchise foundation, and Chicago's got the quarterback to build around. That is going to be such a difficult, yet such an important hire, just because you look everywhere surrounding you in your division, and they've got it. They've got the people, the place, and the culture built largely because of that head coaching hire.
Boy, the NFC is going to be just a gauntlet for years to come. You look at the rosters too, right? Young guys, lots of young talent. You see those lists every year, the top guys 25 and under. I mean, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit litter that, and Chicago's going to too with now Caleb and some of the young guys that they're bringing in. It should be fun. I wanted to ask you, Mike, what's the matchup you're most looking forward to? I want you to put your analyst hat on a little bit here for Sunday night. Minnesota's done some really good things defensively. Number 2 against the run, the takeaways. Obviously, Detroit's offense is fun and dynamic, and Ben Johnson's pulling all those strings. What's the matchup you're most looking forward to Sunday night?
100 of them. I can't steal the thunder
is.
of my partner Collinsworth, but if you ask me for one, it is just that Detroit's offense against the Minnesota defense, and how does the Lions offense handle the pressure that Brian Flores brings, right? That's the calling card for Minnesota, right there at the top of the list in terms of percentage of blitzes per defensive snap in the NFL. And the Lions can be so lethal if they have the right answer and it's out on time. Obviously, Jared Goff has many, many talents in what has been another terrific season. One is not running around to make a play like Jaden Daniels, who we saw last Sunday night in Washington, or certainly Lamar Jackson in Baltimore. That's not what Goff does, but he does a lot of things great. One of the things he does great is read it, see it, diagnose it, get it to the right guy to beat your blitz, to kind of keep that temperature down on the blitz pressure. Brian Flores is going to bring it. He has all year. And the ability of scheme-wise with the answers in Ben Johnson's plan and Jared Goff with his incredible acumen mentally and physically to see it, know it, diagnose it, and get it out. Now, we saw the pressure on Goff was hard. He struggled again in Minnesota. He struggled against some of that pressure when they got there. But when he found the answers in the second half, they went up and down the field. So to me, if you had to boil it down to one thing that's going to flip the game, it would be that, because if you look at it from 20,000 feet, because of all the injuries on defense, the Lions have to score a bunch of points to win the game in all likelihood, right? So if that's the case, then you've got to find a way, and you can't give them easy points. Remember early in that first game, the go for it inside the own 40 that turned around to quick points, and just like that, Minnesota was up 10. Nothing looked like they were going to run away with that game, but it flipped as Detroit got the answers to the pressure. So to me, that's the whole game.
Yeah, and that fumble late by David Montgomery kind of changed things too. Minnesota's really good, tied for first in the league, 31 takeaways. Jared Goff's got to play clean football. Again, speaking with Mike Tirico, play-by-play for NBC, does a great job. He's going to be on the broadcast Sunday night. Mike, just one more quick one for you. You talked about Jared Goff. You talked about Sam Darnold a little bit. Two guys that obviously are terrific stories for their respective teams. How much do you love their story, right? Everybody loves a great comeback story, right? And those two guys, I think, are a great example of it. How much fun is it going to be to watch that matchup? What do you expect from those two guys Sunday night?
Yeah, there's great joy, I think, anytime in sports, and watching somebody who was told, you know what, we're going to move on to somebody else, and then they turn out to thrive. And that's happened in both cases. Sam, multiple places, and Jared, of course, with the Rams. He took them to a Super Bowl, so it's not like he didn't have success there. But I think it is a reminder that too often, the morning sports conversation on TV is usually hyperbole, and this guy's terrible, this guy stinks, this guy can't play, and that whole culture. We have to remember that people grow and people get better, right? Caleb Williams in Chicago is going to get better in all likelihood in the next year or two. And very often we turn the page too quickly, especially at the quarterback position. Look at Bryce Young, right? That was like, okay, great. They made a terrible mistake in the draft. He's not going to be. No, he's turned out to be a much better quarterback here the back end of this season. The Panthers go into next year, I think, feeling like we have a quarterback we can continue to invest and build around. That's the difference in these guys. These two players were moved on from the initial organization that took them with very high draft capital, picks 1 and 3 overall. That's because they had really good talent. They were studied hard going into that draft, and they've just found the right place. Jared Goff found that offensive line the skill position players. And man, when he is going, as we saw the Seattle game, so many games this year, very few incompletions. That's a guy who you can build a franchise around if you build it to those specs. You're not going to build it the same blueprint as Baltimore, the same blueprint elsewhere. And for Sam, I really point to Kevin O'Connell and his ability to get quarterbacks and get the most out of them. And it's an interesting dilemma, Tim. What does Minnesota do if they go 15-2, get to the NFC Championship game? We all in the Michigan area know about J.J. McCarthy. I can tell you from being there in the middle of the season, we saw them right before the Lions-Houston game when Minnesota played Indianapolis. They love J.J. McCarthy. They were all excited about that. And the thought was Sam Darnold's going to move on somewhere else. Maybe a very different story if Darnold takes this another 2 or 3 lengths of the race. So both guys have positioned themselves to have great chapter 2s in their career. It's almost hard to remember Jared Goff with the Rams after all that we've seen with him with the Lions. And Darnold, maybe the next chapter is Minnesota. Maybe it's another team. It proves in both cases, surround the right talent with the right people, offensive line, skill players, offensive system, not a crazy sideshow of everything that happens becomes this headline that he's the worst guy in the league. And you find that the talent usually comes back around years 3, 4, 5 as they grow and mature. So for both of those guys, it's fun to watch them have a moment. It's interesting. Do they belong in the MVP conversation? Yes. The MVP conversation so dominated by Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Barkley, if he gets the record, or even if not, with a 2,000 rushing yard season. But these guys certainly belong someplace on ballots when people fill them out this weekend.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there, Mike. The biggest relationship in any organization, right, is the GM and the head coach, right? Have a GM that can identify talent, and both Brad Holmes and the GM over in Minnesota, they've done a great job of doing that, and then have a head coach and a coaching staff that can develop it. And you see what happens when you've got that great kind of symbiotic relationship. You can win a lot of football games. I can't wait till Sunday night.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think of it as a box. If you have the owner, the general manager, the head coach, and the quarterback, if you have those 4 parts of the box, now you can build inside and build something great. When one of those pieces doesn't align, you've got scattered organization. But when the owner tells the GM, I got you financially to support you, and the GM and the head coach are picking players the same way, and now you pick the quarterback who can make it all move. When you have that box, you got a chance to build it. And you look at this Detroit team, and from the top down, Sheila, Rod Wood, president, obviously, of course, and everything that the front office and Mike and the guys do. Mike is the COO, but Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, Jared Goff. Think about how everything on this team feeds off of that box. And that, to me, if you look at a spine for success in the NFL, that's where it is. Go through all these playoff teams. Your point's perfect. They've got that alignment. They've got a chance, and these two are going to give us a hell of a night Sunday night, we hope.
And you can be good for a long time, Mike. And I think that's the thing that's exciting for Lions fans is they look at this and they're like, this isn't just a flash in the pan. Like, they've got good young players. It's built from the top. They got support from the ownership. They can be good for a long, long time. That's the fun part. You live in Ann Arbor. You know how crazy these Lions fans are, how fun this last 2 years have been. But, boy, Sunday night is going to be something special, too. We all are going to be listening to you for sure. I think the atmosphere is going to be great there. Have a great broadcast and enjoy the game, and we'll see what happens into the playoffs. But Sunday's certainly going to be fun for everybody.
The Lions is giving us some good Sunday nights, and really this whole run of the Lions at this level started in game 272 2 years ago in Green Bay, when they went on that stage and ended the Aaron Rodgers era in Lambeau and kept the Packers out of the playoffs. And it's been 33 wonderful games for Lions fans since that point. And so we'll look forward to game 272 for the second time in 3 years, and great being with you, and looking forward to seeing everybody downtown Sunday night.
All right, Mike, have a good one.
Thanks, Tim. You too. Take care. Happy New Year.
Welcome back to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast. Everybody knows who's sitting next to me, the Mike linebacker for the Detroit Lions, Jack Campbell. Jack, thanks for joining me. Appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you having me.
Big game Sunday, huh?
I know it's gonna be absolutely insane.
I mean, you've had some experience with the playoffs last year, obviously,
Yeah.
that build, that excitement. Does this have kind of that same feel to it, just with the magnitude of the game, but at home too, the atmosphere, everything else?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, you know how Detroit loves their football, so the fans are going to be absolutely nuts. Third down, I'm going to barely be hearing the calls, so it's going to be awesome. But I'm excited. But going back to your question, yeah, like it's pretty much a playoff game, so it's gonna be fun.
That's something I wanted to touch on with the calls, and because you control the green dot, and I've always been curious about this. I know Jared's talked about it before, but having a guy kind of in your head, you know, talking to you and stuff, how just the dynamic of that is sometimes like, is Aaron like talking to you about the play previous sometimes, and then giving you the call, or like what's his style there? Does he just stay right to?
Yeah, we always just stay right on the call.
Okay,
it'll be like just let this guy know this, like alert this guy, just quick stuff. But like, we never talk about pass plays, so it's always just moving on to the next one. So
does that take a little getting used to, having somebody in your head and then you trying to relay it to them? And I know it shuts off like 15 seconds, right?
Yeah, no, especially coming from college. At the time, I didn't have that, so it was all like signals. So now that we're like, I'm here and I have a headset in my head, yeah, it's a little different. But it once you get used to it, it's not bad. So
Congratulations.
Sorry,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say the only thing that gets taken used to is like yelling and screaming the play call and trying to breathe at the same time.
And that makes it harder at home, and that atmosphere is going to be nuts.
It's all good.
On Sunday, but I'm sure you guys will take that.
Yeah.
I want to say congratulations being an alternate for the Pro Bowl. Yeah, that means that you're among those kind of top interior guys. You value that? Do you like the recognition? Does it matter to you or not? That kind of stuff?
No, I mean, I appreciate it. Everyone has their own personal goals, like especially when they come in the NFL. And like me growing up, like I honestly never would have thought I'd be in the NFL. And then like once I got to college, I started realizing maybe that I could do it. Just like working towards that. Now that I'm here, working towards my own like personal goals while I'm in the NFL. So I definitely appreciate it. But at the same time, it's just so much better being 14-2 and having the opportunity to go to the playoffs and have opportunity to chase the Super Bowl. So. Honestly, my main focus is just doing anything I can to make the defense play better. And if I got that recognition or not, like I'm just gonna be me, play the same way that I do, and just keep trying to improve every single day.
You guys weren't planning on playing in it anyways, right? You're going to be prepared for something a little bit different that week.
No doubt about it. Exactly. We got to head down working.
Hey, I want to ask you about the job that Calvin Shepard and really Aaron have done too.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the injuries have been a big storyline, and your room has been hit hard too. And let's see, hopefully Alex comes back this week and you get that'll be a big boost. But just the job that Calvin's done. I mean, you've had different guys, Ezekiel Turner and David and all these guys just jump in. Quan come here and have to play this week. Just the job that they've done, kind of keeping this thing. I know you moving. I know defensively you guys probably haven't played as well as you'd hope at times, but you've still managed to come up with big plays and big stops and kept this thing rolling. Just the job that Calvin's done and Aaron to a bigger extent keeping this thing together.
Yeah, no, I'd say Coach Shep's just been a fantastic coach, not only to me, but just in the whole room, just keeping everyone together, finding the right guys. I don't know how that works, like bringing guys in, like who makes all those decisions. I would assume he has a little bit of say, like what type of player he wants, but fantastic job bringing in the right guys. But then for Coach Shep, just like constantly just like letting everyone know like the standards are the standards. And just holding us to them every single day. And it starts to bleed into just players, like holding to players' standards. And I feel like, he's just set the standards high, which as a player you appreciate because it's always pushing you to be better. And he has that good balance of just like knowing when to push you and then knowing when to just like pull back and just like appreciate you as a human being. So hats off to like him, and I'm just super appreciative of him. And then I'd say AG just as a whole, like just again getting the right guys in your system, and then play call, like making the playbook easy enough for guys that are coming in and easy enough to learn that they can pick it up quick and just play kind of fast and free. So hats off to AG as well. And like AG's he's one of a kind. So I'm just excited to just continue to get a play for him. So
if Calvin ever gets that opportunity, you think he'll make a good defensive coordinator?
I mean, I have no doubt in my mind, because just the way he works and goes about things. So I'm excited to see where like his path takes him, wherever that might be. Again, like I'm just a player, so like I have no pull, but like just appreciative of him, and definitely he's worked for everything he's got. He's earned everything. So, and I feel like it's just there's a lot of coaches, but especially him just holding the linebacker room together the way he has been fantastic. So.
Let's talk about this matchup a little bit. Team you faced week 7, close game. Came right to the end there. You guys played pretty well as a defense. 23 points against that crew, against that passing offense was pretty good. The difference this week, T.J. Hawkinson's back. That affects you a little bit. Just how different of an offense are they with T.J. and having that playmaker at tight end?
Yeah, I feel like this offense is highly powerful. They got explosive players all over the place, so we're gonna have our work cut out for us. That, and then bringing TJ back, I just feel like he's just a crafty route runner. He just knows the game inside and out, knows his job responsibilities, and he just comes up with tough catches play after play. So we're gonna have our work cut out for us with that aspect. And I feel like he's just like the quarterback safety blanket at times too. So we're going to have our work cut out for us. But, again, it's just going to be such a great environment, such a great opportunity. So you couldn't ask for anything else.
What's it like running out of that tunnel at Ford Field when those people are jacked up the way they're going to be jacked up Sunday night? And do you just feed off that energy? Do you just feel it? And is it fuel almost?
Yeah. If you run out of the tunnel and you don't feel something,
you shouldn't be playing this.
So, you can't really even describe it, honestly. It's unbelievable, like, what everything can do, like, to you and just get you jacked up, ready to play. So, I'm just super excited. This atmosphere is going to be awesome, and the fans are just unbelievable.
You got married this offseason.
I did.
How's that treating you? How is married life different at all? Is it the same?
No, it's been good. Me and my wife, we've been doing good. Like, you
guys have been together for quite a while too, right? Go back to your Iowa days.
Yeah, we started to like get dating my sophomore year in college, like early sophomore year. So, we were together like 4 years before we got married, 3.5 years. So, I knew I had a good one, so I better.
I met my wife my freshman year, and we've been together 20 years now.
Yeah,
so
it's good luck.
So so nothing changed it though. No, it's still been the same.
Yeah, so it's just been nice to come home to her every single day and like get to hang out with her, just like getting to hang out with my best friend every single day. Like that, I'd say that's changed just because in college we didn't like get to see each other like every single day because she went to Iowa and then she transferred to Drake.
Right.
So which was like 2 hours.
She was an athlete too, right?
Yeah, she played basketball.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So she was like 2 hours away. So and then her season overlaps my season.
Right.
And like stuff like that. So honestly, we look back and like at times it would have been nice to like hang out and see each other a lot, but it was a blessing. So, but now that we are married and that she's up here, it's been amazing. And
having an athlete like that, she understands what you're going through. She understands the whole deal too, right? So
yeah, she understands it. But at the time, she's my dang biggest critic. I get home and she'll be like, "Why'd you do this?"
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to have, though.
Oh yeah. She tells it how it is. So I appreciate that.
Well, congratulations
thank you.
for that. Congratulations on the alternate to the Pro Bowl. Hopefully that is something you guys never sniff as you're getting ready to go to New Orleans and play that. Sunday's going to be fun. Need a couple big plays from that defense. I know you guys will get it done. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Yeah, have a good one. Thank you. Welcome back to the Twentyman the Huddle podcast. I am very happy to welcome in Ben Goessling. He does a great job covering the Minnesota Vikings for the Minnesota Star-Tribune. He also does the Access Vikings podcast and newsletter on KFan in Minneapolis all the time, too. So he is, you need Minnesota Vikings coverage. He's the guy to go to. Ben, thanks for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Tim. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to chatting with you.
Well, boy. Week 18, and the NFL, the scheduling gods were looking down on the NFL, weren't they? I mean, we've never had a matchup like this in NFL history. Just how fun is this week going to be leading into Sunday, and how much are you looking forward to Sunday night?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I was just working on a story about this for our newsletter this week, and it's historic in a lot of ways. I can remember being a kid. In 1990, the Giants and the 49ers played like a Monday night game. They were both 10, I think they were 10-1, and everybody called it Super Bowl 24.5. And there was an 07 Patriots Colts matchup where I think they were both undefeated. And then we had the big Chiefs Rams game in 2018 with all the points on Monday Night Football. But none of them have been like this. I mean, this is effectively a playoff game. It's not win or go home like a playoff game is, but the winner of the game automatically advances a round further in the playoffs than the loser does. So in that sense, it is very much like a playoff game. And this has become, historically, this is probably not the biggest rivalry in the division. I mean, you can talk about Bears, Packers. You can talk about probably the Lions, Packers with all the Thanksgiving matchups. Certainly, Packers, Vikings has had a lot of history to it. Lions, Bears probably as well. But you could make the argument that this is the preeminent rivalry in the division right now. This is going to have the division winner each of the last 3 years. The Lions win the division at US Bank Stadium last year, but after they prevented the Vikings from clinching at Ford Field in 2022. So there's getting to be enough back and forth between these teams that there's some history, there's some intensity to it, and then the stakes on the line. It's hard to imagine a better setup for the NFL for their Sunday night finale. They couldn't have drawn it up any better than this. I don't think they could have predicted this if they tried.
And it was an easy decision to move this game to Sunday night, obviously last game of the year with everything on the line. And these teams played at US Bank Stadium Week 7. Seems like a long time ago now with everything that's happened. Obviously, the Vikings lost the next week, but then they have just gone on a tear, haven't lost since Week 8. I'm just curious. Lions won that game 31-29, went right down to the end. How are the Vikings a different football team Week 18 than the one the Lions saw back at US Bank Week 7?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing there, Tim, is probably Sam Darnold is playing at a level that I don't think we saw at that point. I mean, he had a couple of games there. They lose that one, they go out and lose to the Rams, and then he really had a couple where they were winning in spite of a few turnovers. And they had kind of a meeting with him after they beat Jacksonville 12-7, and they had a ton of yards, but his turnovers really prevented them from pulling away in that game. And Kevin O'Connell has talked about this, that Sam Darnold really took charge of that meeting. It was just a Monday review the day after the game, kind of watching the film, and Darnold was the one saying, hey, I needed to go here. I needed to come off of this read sooner. I needed to throw this ball in this spot. So there's just been a level of development with him in this offense that I think has them functioning at a higher level than they were in that game in October, and especially now that TJ Hawkinson is back. I mean, I think that's made an awfully big difference to the level of weapons they have. I mean, you've seen everybody kind of try to camp out on Justin Jefferson and dare them to beat the defense with somebody else. And whether it's been Hawkinson, Jordan Addison, I think has 5 touchdowns in the last 3 games and really has been pretty impressive with some of the things he does to beat coverage. So they are different in that regard. They're not with Christian Darrisaw anymore. Obviously, the left tackle tore his ACL in that Rams game. They've been able to get by with Cam Robinson. They've done a nice job protecting Sam Darnold. That probably isn't quite as good as what they would have with Christian Darrisaw, but they've been able to survive. And I think they've been a lot of the same things on defense, but the difference is probably that even as teams catch on to what they're doing, they've done a really nice job of kind of coming up with other wrinkles and figuring out other ways to stay ahead. It's a lot of veteran players that know a lot of different wrinkles and a lot of versatility in that scheme that allow them to adjust when the Lions figure things out. Because you did hear players talk about that after that game, that the Lions had gotten a bead on what the Vikings were doing, where the blitzes were coming from. I think Ben Johnson did a number of things in that game to protection-wise that the Vikings had not seen. So a lot of their approach has been, how do we come up with ways to be versatile enough, be multiple enough that people aren't catching on to what we're doing? And we'll see what that looks like Sunday night. It's certainly one of those chess match elements to this game, but they have been aware of that, and I think have tried to make some adjustments to that on defense.
I'm glad you mentioned Addison and then obviously Hawkinson too, because I think these teams are similar in a lot of ways, with obviously superstar wide receivers with Justin Jefferson and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but it's those complementary pieces that are so important. And you look at Jordan Addison, 10 touchdowns on the year, I believe. Hawkinson, obviously Detroit fans know what he can do and what he can produce. And you've got the same thing with Jamison Williams now stepping into his own here, being that complement to Amon-Ra St. Brown, and obviously Sam Laporta too. So these teams are very similar. Just how important are those secondary pieces, and especially with Addison, how important has his development now in his second year taken some of the pressure off of Justin Jefferson and really been a piece that Sam Darnold seems to really trust now?
Yeah, I mean, that development for him has been a major component to the second half of the season for the Vikings. I mean, he's not a big receiver. He measured, I think, 173 pounds at the combine, but he's gotten stronger. I think that year in an NFL weight room has helped him. He's better against press coverage because of that. And I think his footwork, I mean, you saw it on that stop and go Sunday afternoon against the Packers, where he's able to lull Javon Bullard to sleep and then just turn his hips and then beat him in coverage. He does that a lot. I mean, he's gotten a lot better in terms of being able to use his route running ability to beat corners and get himself open. I think that has made an awfully big difference to what they do, because you see everybody kind of they'll either keep a safety over the top of Jefferson, or it's a straight double team, or, there's different ways that teams go about it. But the upshot has been, beat us with anybody else. We dare you. And Addison has allowed the Vikings to do that. I think that the level of confidence, the level of trust that Darnold has developed in him has been a big part of that. So yes, the complementary pieces, I mean, you go down the line with the Vikings too. Jalen Naylor he scored a touchdown on Sunday, I think had 5 catches. He'll get the ball some. And then, the Vikings certainly know with the Lions, all of the people you have to defend, all of the different things you have to worry about with that offense. Even though David Montgomery's not there, obviously Jahmyr Gibbs has still kept that running game going at almost the same level. You have Laporta, you have Jamison Williams, you have obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's kind of the chief focus of everybody's attention on defense. And then you have Jared Goff playing as well as anybody in the league. So both of these teams have a lot of ways to attack you. And I'm sure both of these defensive coordinators are spending plenty of time trying to figure out how to stop all of it this week.
You mentioned that veteran Vikings defense have been playing some really good ball. I think the two things that stand out to me just when looking at them is the run defense, number 2 in the league, I think 88 yards per game. Now, the Lions had some success in that first matchup. Gibbs went over 100 yards. I think the Lions had just about 150. I think it was maybe 144 yards. So a little bit of an oddity for what they were doing, up to that point. And then the takeaways is the big one to me, Ben. I mean, 31 takeaways, tied for number 1 in the NFL. What's really been the secret sauce to that Vikings defense? Is it just the pressure looks and the pressure, and you're so worried about it that you make mistakes, or what have they been so good at really consistently all year long?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it is the pressure looks, but they are really good at showing the threat of pressure and then not bringing it. I mean, you will see them do that on third downs almost as much as anything. Though the blitz downs for them sometimes are first and second down, where that's where they'll bring more pressure. They'll run blitz a lot. I mean, I think you saw some of that on Sunday against the Packers. They were able to blitz off the edge and stop a couple of runs that way. And then third down, sometimes they'll bring it and sometimes they'll show it and then drop guys, and you have to figure out who's coming, who's dropping. That's been, I think, as much of their DNA as the all-out pressures on third down. So it's been some of that. It's been, I think, a lot of places where you have linebackers that can drop into coverage. I think Andrew Van Ginkel, you've seen that this year. Blake Cashman certainly has been exceptional in coverage. I mean, that's the other piece for the Vikings is he missed that first game against the Lions, and you really have seen how different of a defense this is when he's there. I mean, the stuff that I think the Lions picked on the Vikings a lot over the middle of the field in that game, and the Vikings defend differently when they have Cashman in the middle of it. So it's been a lot of those things that they've been able to put to work. It's a lot of players who have played a lot of football. It's a lot of players that understand kind of all of the checks and different things that they do in their defense. The corners have held up. I mean, I don't know that they would they played a lot more man coverage. I think that'll be the other thing to be watching this week if they continue to do that, how the Lions attack it. I think the Lions probably will try to test them, as a lot of teams have with those corners. But a lot of guys that have made plays on the ball, and that's been a huge momentum swing for the Vikings all season.
Yeah, you talked about Darnold's fine play in that meeting after that Jacksonville game, and kind of how he embraced the limiting the turnovers. Jared Goff had a similar thing, a couple years ago when they were turning it over, kind of turned that corner. And now we've seen how he's played the last 2 years. But why does Sam fit so well in Kevin O'Connell's system? And it just from the locker room, obviously last week with the players and how they embraced him, it looks like that whole organization has embraced him. So 2-part question. 1, why does he fit so well? And Ben, what's his future? He's going to be a free agent this offseason, and that's a tough decision that they've got to make, because they obviously spent a first-round pick on J.J. McCarthy, their kind of guy in the wings, but this guy's playing so well. I mean, he's playing at an MVP caliber level if some other guys around the league weren't playing as well as they are too. Just what's the decision going forward, and why does he fit?
Yeah, I mean, that question, the the question of his future is the one I get as much as anything these days. So certainly a big decision for them there. But to take the first part of it first, and we'll come back to the question about the future. I think he has fit in part because you have a lot of guys on this team. They signed a lot of free agents. There are a lot of players, whether it's Grenard, Cashman, Andrew Van Ginkel, Aaron Jones, a number of them that were either signed to 2-year deals or just in case of a lot of them a 1-year deal. So I think there's a level of people have given up on me. People have decided I'm not worth a long-term deal among a number of players on this team that everybody kind of can relate to. There's a little bit of Sam Darnold's story in a lot of different players on this team. So I think it's been some of that. Some of it's also been they spend a lot of time talking about culture to the point where people kind of shrug and roll their eyes about, how important is this really? They believe that this is kind of the connective tissue of this team. There's a lot of time spent getting to know people as people and trying to find ways for everybody to connect off the field. I mean, the defense gets together every Thursday night at Brian Flores' house. They call it Fellowship Thursdays. So there's a lot of these things that they're doing pretty consistently and pretty intentionally to build relationships between players. I think some of that has allowed people to get to know Darnold. He's not a very outspoken guy. I think the struggles he's had in the NFL have led him to kind of keep to himself probably a little more than you would see him do otherwise. But I think some of those places that they have created ways for players to connect have probably helped teammates get to know him a little bit better. But yes, the question about his future is a big one because I've kind of thought all season, as high as they've been on J.J. McCarthy, that Darnold moves on and McCarthy takes over as the starter. I mean, they were going to give him a lot of first-team work and a couple of joint practices with the Browns had he not gotten hurt in that first preseason game. So you're kind of thinking, okay, they're going to turn it over to him. But when Darnold has played at this level, I don't think you can just let that walk out the door because the leverage you have, you're not going to get what he's worth if you let him leave and hope for a comp pick in a year from now. So there's that piece of it. I don't think they are naive to that at all. And then I don't know that you let quarterback play walk out the door like this because, much like the Lions with Jared Goff, you find that if this guy is playing at this level, it transforms everything. It's not about leverage anymore. It's about this guy can be the answer for us at quarterback for a long time. So do they franchise him? Do they sign him to a long-term deal? I mean, I think the franchise tag is certainly a good possibility, and then that allows them to have a little more time with McCarthy and have him go through the offseason, go through a full training camp again, which he didn't get because that preseason time was kind of taken away because of that injury. So it gives them some flexibility. They also then have two quarterbacks that one has played at this level and one would probably compare pretty favorably to the quarterbacks in this draft if he was in this year's draft. So, I don't know where that goes. I don't know if they would say, let's try to shop J.J. McCarthy because we think Sam Darnold's the answer. But Sam Darnold is not Kirk Cousins' age. He's not 35. He's only 27 years old. And if they felt like he could be the answer long term, I don't know. I think it's very interesting that they could kind of settle on him and say, we could ride with this guy for a long time. I mean, he was the third pick in the draft in 2018, and a lot of their thesis has been quarterbacks, if they're in the right setting, can succeed even if their first team didn't maximize their talent. So you've seen the Vikings do that. I think there's a lot of decisions they're going to have to make, but they're certainly aware of the fact that the way Sam Darnold has played probably changes the entire calculation here.
And I'm having a great conversation with Ben Goessling. Does a great job with the Minnesota Star Tribune. Just a couple more quick ones for you, Ben. Injury-wise, heading into Sunday night, how are the Vikings looking? Anything stand out? Any possibilities that they could miss some guys?
Well, they're fairly healthy overall. I mean, they have players, I think, playing through a few things. Aaron Jones has been playing through a couple of different injuries. They took him out a little bit early on Sunday afternoon, just more precautionary stuff. But I would expect we'll see him limited a little bit in practice this week. But I think he'll be out there playing. It'll just be a question of how much they have to manage those things. Patrick Jones took a low block from Tucker Kraft on Sunday. That they were worried about his knee early in that game. He's, a pass rusher that you'll see in a number of different spots, but they seemed optimistic about the possibility of him coming back for this one as well. So overall, they are in fairly decent health. I mean, you've had guys coming back from some things. Ivan Pace, the middle linebacker, came back from an injury a couple of weeks ago off of injured reserve. Actually, I think last week was his first game back. So you've had guys in and out of the lineup, but overall, they have been in decent health and decent injury state. I mean, certainly they have not dealt with what the Lions have dealt with. Let's put it that way. So they should be, I think, in a pretty good state of health coming into this one with all of the guys that they have. There's a few things to manage, but overall for Week 18, I think they'd take that position over the way most teams would find themselves.
Hey, you talked about culture and the building of culture. As somebody who's been covering the Lions for 15 years, I can tell you how important that is. And it's the same situation here with Dan Campbell, what he's built, the culture here. So when you talked about that, that will certainly resonate with Lions fans about building the culture and how important that is, and maybe how some people don't view it. I can tell you from where we've been to where we are now, and you've had your moments too, that is a really big part of it. And I'm glad you touched on it. Okay, let's finish with this, Ben. What's the key? What's the key for the Minnesota Vikings to come to Detroit, upset the Lions, and win the division for the second time in 3 years, get that bye, and make Detroit a 14-win football team that has to go on the road in the first round? That's crazy that either of these teams are going to be facing that situation, 14 wins, and you're going to start as the 5 seed on the road. But what's the key for Minnesota come Sunday to get a win at Ford Field?
Yeah, whoever loses this game, Tim, I think is the winningest wild card in NFL history. I don't think there's ever been a 14-win wild card after looking that up this week. So, and in fact, I think these two teams are the only second and third in the history of the NFC North to even get to 14 wins behind the Packers in 2011 when they went 15-1. So, yeah, whoever loses this is probably not deserving of going on the road, but that's obviously how the playoff situation works. The key for the Vikings, I think, Sunday night is having more answers to that Lions offense than they had in the first one. I think a lot of what the Lions did to solve the Vikings blitzes, to run the ball as effectively as they were able to do it, the Vikings have to find ways to stop that. I think they have to be able to get to Jared Goff. They know that Jared Goff, he's been better against pressure, I think, than he was earlier in his career, but I think they certainly know if you can pressure him, it looks different. I mean, Brian Flores has seen Jared Goff a lot, including in a Super Bowl. They've crossed paths in some pretty big stages over the course of their careers. So getting pressure on him and then being able to slow down Jahmyr Gibbs. He was awfully dynamic. I mean, you guys see him every week, but he was awfully dynamic in that first game. He's a guy the Vikings liked a lot coming out of the draft as well. They weren't going to draft a running back at that spot, but they were very high on him. So they know what he can do. I think it's being able to stop him, it's being able to get pressure, and then to sew up the middle of the field better than they did in that first game. I think Blake Cashman being there probably helps, but the way they got attacked on some of those crossing routes, they have to be better there because the Lions can extend drives, they can wear down a defense, and obviously, as you know, they will make you play 4 downs quite a bit. It's not we get 3 and we're off the field. It's we got to defend for 4th down, including when they'll probably bow up and run it quite a bit. So I think a lot of it comes down to the defense being more structurally sound than it was in that first one. And then, you're certainly going to see the Lions corners be physical with Justin Jefferson. He's had some big days against Detroit in the past. So I think a lot of this comes down to, there's going to be a lot of points, but whoever comes up with the stop when they need it, I think probably comes out with this one. And for the Vikings, it's a lot of coming up with answers to the things the Lions did to hurt them in that first game.
Yeah, and picking up the blitz is going to be huge for Detroit. And look, blitz Jared Goff at your own risk because he's got one of the higher passer ratings in the league. When they pick up that blitz and you're going to put Jameson Williams one-on-one, you're going to put Sate one-on-one, you're going to put some of those guys one-on-one, you better get there. And so that will certainly be a fun dynamic to this. And look, can Detroit slow down that Minnesota passing game now with all the weapons and TJ Hawkinson back? They didn't face him the first time. So I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of points scored in this one. I think it's going to be fun. Can who gets that crucial stop, that crucial turnover? I think late. It's going to be close. It's going to be fun. Safe travels here. It will be a crazy environment in Ford Field. You know about crazy environments there at US Bank. It's one of my favorite places to go. The environment is crazy there, but it's going to be something different here on Sunday, Ben. It's going to be fun. Safe travels, and we'll see you on Sunday night.
Yeah, it could be the second of 3 between these teams, Tim. Who knows? I mean, it's very possible that they'll see each other again. But yeah, Sunday night should be pretty historic, a lot of fun, and looking forward to seeing you there.
I appreciate you. Thanks, Ben.
All right, thanks.